All right, folks, we're here today with Samuel Vaughn. We want to talk to him about his new book, It Filled the House. It's an excellent book, and we're wanted to bring him on behalf of the Apostolic Review. Brother Samuel hails from Georgia, the great state of Georgia, and lives Watkinsville currently. Was in Charleston preaching for us last evening, so we arranged to have a little bit of time. So thank you, Brother Vaughn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's an honor. Been a big fan of the Apostolic Review for quite a while now, ever since it really started gaining traction. And I'm very
Yeah.
thankful and humbled by the opportunity, not only to have the book promoted as much as it is on social media, but to also have the opportunity to interview means a lot. So I'm excited to be here today. Very
Well, tell
excited.
us tell us a little bit about yourself, just to give everybody an idea of your background, church you attend, and
Okay.
tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, absolutely. I attend New Life Apostolic under Pastor Tim Hammond there in Watkinsville, Georgia, and been going there for a long time. I'm about to enter my 6th year as the student pastor there, serving. And shortly after, right before I graduated from the University of Georgia, started being the student pastor there.
Awesome.
Serving there, love it. Very thankful for the opportunities God's blessed us with, and just excited what He has in store, and could be getting married here pretty soon, and excited about that, and starting our ministry together as well.
Super. Well, we want to talk to you about the book. Obviously, you talk about the popularity of the Apostolic Review, but your book has been talked about, discussed, shared a lot on social media. And I know this is kind of like an introduction for some people for you, other than the book.
Mhm.
So we want to just kind of talk a little bit about the process of some of the things that you went through while writing this book. We feel like that
Sure.
there could be a great number of young men out there that may have a burden or may feel to write a book and would like to hear from someone who
Right.
already at this point in your life
Yeah.
have been there and done that. I mean, there's guys twice your age that probably in their heart wish that they'd already completed a project like this. So this is
Sure.
this is incredible. So we want to start with what inspired you to write the book.
Sure. Um, I was I picked up on the discipline of reading um, probably while I was in college. Started reading a lot of doctrinal books, wanting to get into ministry. You have the basics. Bishop Bernard and his
Yeah,
books on doctrine, oneness of the Godhead,
sure.
etc. And from there, just really developed a love for reading. And so I was reading a book by John Bevere. Uh, Overall, probably my favorite author at present. He wrote a book called A Heart Ablaze. He's
Mm,
most known for Bait of Satan, which we talked about earlier.
yeah.
Heart Ablaze, he focuses really on Moses and the tabernacle
Mhm.
and Moses and the burning bush. And I finished that book, and it just stuck in my spirit. And just in prayer and study of that story, God began to just drop some things on me.
Yeah,
And I started noticing some parallels,
sure.
which we'll probably talk more about, between that story and a couple other stories in the Bible. And, I just started writing them down, thought maybe it was a message. And before I knew it, I had 40 pages of notes. And I'm like, this is going to be one long message, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. How many saints out there wishing that the pastor would just wrote a
Yeah.
book rather than preaching an hour and a half long sermon? But no, that's
Exactly.
that's interesting. It's fascinating to me because we were talking earlier about
Sure.
how it came about, and I want to go ahead and kind of start that conversation
Sure.
if we can,
Yeah.
because like I'm looking at you, I'm looking at this book. It's a fantastic book,
Thank you.
and I was thinking to myself, like, did you just have a desire to write? Like your whole life, was you thinking one of these days I want to write a book,
Sure.
or did this, was the idea of, like, I think I framed it this way to you earlier. Was it the idea of writing a book that got you to this book, or was it the
Right.
book and the material?
Right.
So,
Well, no, I'd never really imagined of writing a book before.
wow,
It was very organic.
yeah,
Um, I have a blog that I haven't updated in quite a while.
Sure.
Written a few pieces here and there. Actually wrote an article for the Apostolic Witness
Hmm.
on when my cousin Zach was struck by lightning.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, so that was probably 8 years ago or so. But other than that, never really had any aspirations to write a book. And like I said, it just kind of started taking down some notes and had a phone call with a friend of mine, Brother Stephen Gill, who's
Yeah,
written
great
three
guy.
exceptional books himself.
Yeah.
He's written a book on church history called Not Another, which I highly recommend. He's written a book called Desiring Life, which, to my knowledge, was the first apostolic book of ethics, morality, and really apologetics. Is incredible. Touches on a number of topics.
Excellent.
So he's well established and had been pushing me for a couple years to write a book on my own. And so I got this idea and noticed it was it had potential. And so I called him and workshop the idea with him,
Yeah.
and he was all about it.
Super.
And it kind of just took off from there. And like I said, very organic process. I just kind of put down all the thoughts on a Google Doc, and
Mhm.
for a couple hours a week would just go in there and add, edit,
Yeah.
and over the course of about 5 months,
Okay.
actually had the content finished.
Wow.
As far as the main thrust. Now, of course, grammar, organization. I didn't have any chapters, nothing. Just had kind of a beginning to end idea.
Really? Oh, that's
Yeah, I didn't
interesting.
have the main ideas fleshed out. Had some sentences and stuff, but after 5 months, I pretty much had the core of the book. Just had to organize it and put a cover
Super.
on it.
Well,
So,
during that time, like, was there specific practices and disciplines like of time that you really felt inspired? Like, I think I try to put myself in someone's shoes that would be attempting this.
sure.
You know, it kind of can seem like a long journey. I
Yeah,
mean, but you saying 5 months, that's incredible. But what did that look like in practice?
sure.
Like, did you? Well, just talk about it. Like let me say this: was it more or less like you had a notebook with you, or just or did you have scheduled times? Like, what did that?
Sure.
What was some of the processes and practices
Yeah.
during that 5 month period?
Yeah, great question. I admire people that carry notebooks with them because I want to be that type of person.
Right.
I want to have, be in the coffee shop writing stuff down. Um, I'm very, very scatterbrained, and I'm also very forgetful.
Hmm.
So the Notes app on my phone is a godsend. So if I'm out and about and I get
Yeah.
inspiration, just write it down. Um, but to be honest with you, I tried to be disciplined at least a couple times a week because at that time, um, you know, I had a lot of ministry, busy with ministry kind of things going on,
Sure.
and I didn't have a deadline. I didn't necessarily have a time to be finished, so I
Hmm.
just took it easy, and just wrote as I had the time. So certainly not the most disciplined in
I
that
see.
approach. Now, somebody who has a goal to write a book would certainly approach it much differently.
Yeah.
Probably set time to write. I know Brother Nate Whitley. I've read some of his work about how he schedules his day writing in the morning, and I think that's exceptional. So for me, it was very, very organic and just kind of happened, to be honest with you.
Well, it's when I hear you talk about that, I mean, I could hear what you're saying as far as guys that are very strict and organized, but as a guy that sometimes trends more that way, I know that I can frustrate myself and get into blocks. But
Mm,
when you're open to it and you don't really put that amount of pressure on yourself, I mean, it sounds like it worked great for you,
sure.
and that's possibility for other guys as well. I mean, I know sometimes I remember my grandmother used to tell me, and it wasn't just about writing or preparing to preach, but a lot of things in life that sometimes it's best just to stop,
Yeah.
walk away,
Yeah.
do something else, and then
Exactly.
come back to it. Because that's was kind of the basis of the question I was asking. It was like, where did you find that inspiration? Like, what
Sure.
was the best setting? But
Yeah. Well, to that point, I didn't necessarily have a defined discipline for writing, but I have a goal in my reading discipline to at least read 10 pages of a book a night. So I figure if it's a 300-page book, I read at least 10 pages a night, I can knock it out in a month. And that way, doesn't matter how much I've got going on, how busy my schedule is, 10 pages is easy. I mean, you can knock that out in a very short time span. And so I kept up, for the most part, kept that discipline while I was writing. So at
Yeah.
least I always had some type of source that I was kind of filling myself, even if it wasn't something related to that topic. Although I was reading a lot of works that I did reference in the book, so that definitely helped me stay on task.
Super, super. So, we've talked about what inspired you to write the book. What about the Who? What
Oh
are
man,
you
yeah,
mentioned Stephen Gill, obviously
yes,
great guy, great author, great
yes,
preacher. But what are some other leaders, authors that potentially provided some
sure,
inspiration for you?
absolutely, yeah. Stephen was he was I can't underscore it how important he was. He helped me do a lot of the editing and formatting, just incredible. Brother Nate Whitley, I mentioned earlier too. I called him and asked him to write the back cover portion, the promotion there, and he gave me some good advice, different ones here and there. Um, I think really the two people that I don't give enough credit to because they didn't necessarily have any fingerprints on the book itself is my father and my pastor.
That's awesome.
Both of them great preachers of the gospel.
Yeah,
And the way they look at scripture is when they're preaching, they can put you there in that moment.
yeah.
And
That's a gift.
a lot of absolutely.
Yeah,
And a lot of the stories and the way the book is presented is you're with Moses in the tabernacle. You're outside the tabernacle as the children of Israel seeing the fire come
hmm
down. You're at the temple with Solomon, offering I think it was 120,000 sacrifices or something like that. I mean, you can smell the burning of
man.
so the way they preach, that really inspired me, not just in writing but in preaching as well. How to present um, a story and
Yeah,
to make it
it's
like you're
important.
there. Yeah, absolutely. So those two people I would say overall were gave me some invaluable help.
Yeah, well, that's incredible. I mean um, that outer influence,
Sure,
that, and I find that in your book, and that's a gift. I mean that's very
sure.
important to be able to put you at the scene,
Yeah.
so to speak. And I agree. I've never heard your dad preach, but
Oh,
I've heard your
incredible.
pastor, and I love brother Tim Hammond, one of my favorite preachers of all time. He's always top of my list, and that's it just goes to show how many different things can go into a project like this. So,
Absolutely.
um, another question I have for you is, when did you know? And I think this is important to try to hear your perspective on, because as a preacher, if you're a preacher out there or a pastor writing messages, I mean, obviously when you saw the material just keep rolling out, that was an
Sure.
indication for you. Um, but how do you distinct the two?
Sure.
How do you provide the distinction between, because you get a lot of ideas and you think maybe I should write about that, but how did when did you know?
Yeah. Great question. Of course, like I mentioned, as far as the amount of content was a clear indicator, but honestly, it was I just felt a release in the spirit,
Really?
and I actually have two or three ideas right now that I'm workshopping, maybe for another book, and I think each of them have potential to be type book length
Right.
type material and good quality content, but just have not felt that release as of yet. And it's those moments when when you have a message that God has given you, it's from God
Mm-hmm.
for a specific congregation or a specific time.
Yeah.
It was a very similar feeling, and I it's one of those things you can't really describe, but it was just I just knew.
Yeah.
And the more I time I poured into it, God just kept pouring some things into me,
Sure.
different thoughts, and was able to bring in some other stories and even pieces of other messages I've preached that I felt was important to connect. And so um, it was just a feeling. Just
Yeah.
during the writing process, I'm like, this is it. And
So that's amazing though, because you want. I'm sure it's your desire. I can hear this from you, and it would be others as well. You want to be led by the Spirit
absolutely,
in this. It's not just something you want to do. I mean, you
sure,
definitely want to impact lives. So that's an interesting
sure,
element. So, for guys out there who feel the desire to write a book, haven't made that step, how would you encourage them? Like,
Sure.
what are some things that you feel like you could offer for them to be able to proceed?
Absolutely. Um, find a small step and take it.
Mm,
You know, for me, looking back, I didn't realize it, but starting that blog was really the first, um, if you will, first way to really stretch my legs or,
mm-hmm.
flex the creative muscle, so to speak, in writing, because preaching and writing are completely different.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, one of the mistakes I made early on in writing the book is I wrote it like a sermon, and brother Stephen Gill helped me understand that there's certain things you can say with a crowd of people
Yeah.
that understand where you're coming from, understand the Bible doctrine, and they can pick up and roll with it.
Yeah.
And preaching a lot of times becomes a conversation
Mm,
where they may not be saying stuff back, but there's that exchange of information,
yeah.
and it doesn't work like that,
That's
because
great.
if you're writing a book, you have no idea who's going to pick it up,
Sure.
when. It may be years from now.
Right.
You don't know if they're apostolic. You don't know if they're atheist. You don't know if they're Baptist. They don't understand the position you're coming from, and so you have to learn how to communicate it. You have to really explain things correctly. You need to be able, if
Yeah.
you make an argument, you have to support it with evidence.
Sure.
You can't just send a message like you can just keep rolling with it, and people kind of can follow you. So you have to learn certain things like that, and it's valuable to find places to do that. So a blog is perfect,
Yeah.
because you can put it out there, you can promote it on social media easily, and it doesn't have to be long. It could be a few paragraphs, but you have to learn to get an idea and really workshop that,
Yeah.
and kind of pull it out. So that's a really good first step.
Absolutely.
That I would recommend. A lot of people do something as simple as just making Facebook posts. I mean, we were talking last night about the value of Twitter.
Yeah.
It teaches you to be concise.
Yeah. That's true.
It teaches you, and I think
I
that
prefer
makes statements more potent.
Yeah.
One of the best books I ever read was called Follow the Cloud by John Stickle. It was actually recommended to me when I was sharing with a friend about writing this book.
It's great.
And what I love about it is, I mean, it's almost like every line is potent. I mean,
Yeah.
you could take one line, every line out of the book, and make a sermon out of it. I mean, it is just jam packed. So, social media, one of the benefits is it teaches us to be concise, and
Yeah.
that's just as important in writing as it is speaking. So, just find a small step and take it, and you'll learn to stretch your legs along the way.
Awesome, man. That's great advice. I like how many book recommendations. I'm keeping a tally in my head. I think
Sorry.
it's 6 already.
Really? Yeah.
So any guys out there listening, looking for book recommendation,
Sure.
man, you've done gives a good solid 6.
Sure.
And we're not all the way done yet. So
Yeah, that's true.
no, that's great advice. Going back to the writing, like the
Sure.
process, and obviously you have this one project and more coming, and I think everybody's really excited about that. At least I am. But as far as like your process of writing, what would you redo to make the process less strenuous? Like
man.
when you're looking back,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I want to talk about your new projects here in a minute. But you're looking back over what you've done here,
Sure.
and then going to your next. What could you what are some field notes?
Sure.
What are some things you could tell guys now that might could be helpful?
Yeah. A couple lessons I learned. The one I just mentioned is really important about not writing a sermon. The other one is more practical.
Yeah.
I love Google Docs. That's where I type up my messages because I can access it from my phone, my
Sure.
iPad, computer. The formatting is very challenging because we printed using we dumped it all in Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
To make it printable for Amazon, and that caused a lot of issues. So for the next project, if the Lord were to allow me to do that, I would just start straight from Microsoft Word. And I know that's simple,
Yeah.
but boy, there was hours of readjusting and page breaks and
Yeah.
a lot of things like that. I would just, there's a number of things you look back and maybe do things differently. But overall, making it less strenuous, just be patient.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a very patient person. It's one of the fruit of the Spirit that I'm working on developing.
Sure.
And I was just eager to get it done, get it out.
Yeah.
And I was advised to kind of just take my time. And so even if you have a goal of writing a book, be very wise about your goal of when you want it to be published.
Sure.
Because the longer you let it churn, inside and think about it and
Yeah.
chew on it in your heart, that makes it so much more relatable and personable. And the more you spend actually writing it, writing is easy, the editing is a pain.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard from a lot of writers, and
Sure.
it was very true. I spent, like I said, 5 months creating content, but probably 7 months editing and reformatting.
I see.
So be patient.
Yeah.
Take your time. Read one chapter at a time. And I was thankful to have a few people, yourself included, take a look at a chapter or two and kind of give some feedback.
Sure.
And that helped a lot. Getting out of your own head, because you can have a thought
Yeah.
and be perfect, but by the time you put it on paper,
Yeah.
it may not come across clearly. And so I was very, very thankful to have different people to take a look at it and to help workshop it, but ultimately just being patient. Easier said than done.
Yeah.
Simple advice, hard to execute.
Yeah. So you've done a lot of just going back, editing your own
Yes.
words, going back. Did you outsource the editing to someone else, or did you do the final editing yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I did a lot of it myself. Brother Stephen Gill, again, I know I've mentioned him several times, and
Yeah.
for good reason. Helped me line by line look at everything from content to organization,
Super.
grammar. He was a big help, and so. But a lot. I think I ended up reading it 3 times by the time I was over, and I was ready to be done with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how.
Awesome. So, I mean, it's a great book. I want to
Thank you.
hold it up there. The cover design is great. I mean, it's very attractable.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
it's attractive.
Yeah, Brother Fry did an incredible job.
So how did that? Is this something that he offers? It's like something that he does.
Sure.
How did that come about? I'm sure. I'm just thinking about guys that are looking to you draw information and then
Sure.
some practical information, because this is a very nice
Yeah.
looking book. I mean, this is something you'd see in a bookstore.
Sure.
Which I'm sure that's the
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, great question. As far as how to produce a book is actually where the question I get most asked. Brother Fry, he did an incredible job. He does a lot of graphic design, promotional work for the ALJC, especially with the Apostolic Crusaders. He was a big help. He asked me some questions, what I wanted, and I basically gave him very specifically what I wanted, and then he came back with that. And initially, it was not what I had outlined and expected, and I'm like, I don't know. But the more I thought about it and asked other people, I realized, this is perfect.
Yeah.
And it's one of those examples in life where you have a great idea until you talk to somebody who has sense and you realize how terrible of an idea it was. I'm not a graphic designer by any stretch of the imagination.
Sure.
And he did an outstanding job. I completely love it. And, the process of submitting and actually putting the book together was challenging. But I went through Amazon. Basically, you just upload your manuscript and your book cover.
Yeah.
And Amazon, they have a publishing company now, and they streamlined the process and made it very user-friendly.
I see.
Couple, complicated things as far as getting an ISBN number. But overall, if anybody's looking to produce a book, I think that would be a perfect route to go, especially if you're a first-time writer like myself.
Super. Well, let's talk a little bit about, like, if you'd like. I mean,
Sure.
You don't have to, but what are some upcoming? I mean, you want to talk a little bit about some of the projects that you have, or you just want to keep it close to your chest, so to speak, or
sure. Yeah, these are just ideas at this point.
Yeah.
They may never be put on paper. The Lord gave me a message earlier this year, and I was privileged to preach it at a conference. The title was "He Loves the Soil," and he started dealing with me about the parable of the sower. And what always has confused me, maybe even frustrated might be a better word, about that parable is it's almost like the sower wasted all the seed on the bad ground, the stony ground.
I see what you're saying.
The thorny ground, where it didn't have any roots and the sun choked it. Why not just throw it all on the good soil? why not throw all the
Great
seed
question.
on the 30, 60, get 30, 60, 100%
Right.
increase? And God began to deal with me that the different types of soil are just different types of people. And there are some people, and Jesus explains the parable, and I'm not going to go through that, but the different types of soil represents different types of people, and the seed represents the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if I, not to be blasphemous at all, but if I was God, I'm going to be efficient, and I'm going to throw
Yeah.
all the seed against people who are going to receive it. I'm not
Yeah.
going to waste my time. And as a minister of the gospel, if I'm out witnessing, I want to spend my time with people who are going to be receptive.
Yeah.
I don't want to waste my time. That's the way that I think.
Mm-hmm.
But see, God loves all the soil,
Yeah.
and he doesn't want anybody to stand at the judgment seat without an opportunity, to hear the gospel.
Excellent.
He knows, there are people that are going to reject it, but he
Yeah.
loves people so much, he wants to give them the opportunity to do that. And so I feel like that may potentially be a book at some point.
Excellent.
We'll see. And a couple, I do feel really, really burdened about a topic we don't hear a lot about at Pentecost, which is victim mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And I've struggled with that a lot in my own journey, and God's given me victory over that.
Sure.
And it is a silent killer
Yeah.
of dreams, of faith, of ministries. Because you can buy into the narrative from the enemy that the world's out to get you.
Right.
Which, when you start believing that, you close off the voice of God, the man of God in your life. When the man of God brings correction, you think of it as, he's just trying to step on my toes. He's just trying to. So there's a lot of things with that, and it's a very personal thing for me, and so I feel that would be helpful. So again, these are just ideas that I've been kicking around for a while, and maybe at some point God will give me the green light.
Man, I like it. I think both of those would be a great benefit. So
Sure.
give something for folks that are following you to look forward to, man.
Sure.
That's really great. So we're getting close to the end here on our discussion. I would like to know. We were discussing this earlier. Like what are you reading right now?
Sure.
This is that time. It's that time of year.
Yes.
You're I texted Brother Martin earlier, and I'm like, this is the day if you're going to try to wrap up those books and
Exactly.
start the new list. So guys are looking, to develop
Sure.
a list for next year. So let's start with just what you're reading now.
Sure.
Like, what are you reading that's got your attention currently?
Yeah. Man, that's important. I know we could talk hours about the value of reading.
Yeah.
It was actually Brother John Fortner taught me that leaders are readers.
Yeah.
I think it's valuable. Right now, I've actually been reading a lot of history.
Yeah.
Love history.
Absolutely.
We've talked a good bit about it. Finished some World War II books and just finished American Revolutionary War book. I think there's a lot to learn about people.
Yeah.
From fascinating figures. We were talking about Winston Churchill,
Yeah.
Douglas MacArthur, different figures. Some of the most impactful books I've read this year. I read
that's important. Like looking over last year. And sorry to
Yes.
interrupt you, but looking over all over last year. What's the book?
Exactly.
My brother, I found. We were out book shopping earlier.
Yeah.
And I found the book that my brother has told me about, for all year long. Best he's read. So I picked it up. I'm gonna put it on my list for next year.
Sure.
But what about you? Like what stands out?
Absolutely.
Out of what you read that you'd highly recommend guys put on their list.
Man, during quarantine you have a lot of time to read, right?
Yeah.
There've been 3 books that have probably impacted me the most. The first I finished the very beginning of the year was the biography of Benny DeMerchant, the Brazilian missionary. Incredible. I think it's the book title's Full Throttle. I picked it up at the.
I didn't even realize that was available.
Incredible! I picked it up at the Pentecostal Publishing House booth at convention last year, and man, I just blew through it. And some of the stories he tells about going to Brazil, not even knowing Portuguese, and God just opening door after door. I mean, it'll give you chill bumps, and you'll read
Excellent.
it probably in one night. It's amazing. That was really powerful. Another book I read, another John Bevere book, Thus Saith the Lord. Really great book talking about just how to understand how to give words, and how
Yeah.
a lot of people are scared of spiritual gifts because it's been damaged.
Yeah.
And he's not an apostolic author, but he does offer a lot of really good material. So that was incredible. And then a book we talked about earlier, Church of Cowards by Matt Walsh.
Yeah.
Another guy, I know he writes for the Daily Wire. You think of him more of a political commentator,
Yeah.
but man, his material, I mean, you would think that he was preaching at a conference with some of
Yeah.
the things he says, really powerful and convicting, and it really, really kind of sets the stage of where we are now. And I'll have to say that, as far as reading apostolic authors, man, there's been so much content.
Yes.
Brother Whitley
It's
put
been
out
great.
a
Great
book
year.
this year. Brother Gurley put out a great book.
Yes.
Bishop Bernard. Um, I really feel, Brother Chessor, that we're in the golden age of apostolic media.
Yes.
Not just books,
Sure.
but I mean, folks like myself. I mean, I'll be 27 in 2 months.
Yes.
You have people that are writing books even at a young age, podcasts like the Apostolic Review. I believe wholeheartedly is a God ordained ministry.
Yes.
What Brother Mancino and Brother Bracamonte and Brother Jackson, I mean,
Yes.
these guys are spiritual giants
I
in my
know.
opinion.
Absolutely.
I'm so thankful. There's a couple podcasts that are really great too. If I could make a couple
Oh,
recommendations.
absolutely. That'd be great.
There's a couple guys I think they're out of Little Rock, Arkansas. The Crucial Conversation.
Yeah, I've heard of those guys.
Great podcast, and they talk about a lot of taboo topics, and interview people that have incredible testimonies. Another great podcast, Sparrow.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of the name of it.
No, I know the one. I know the one you're talking about. Somebody sent that to me a couple weeks ago, just about one particular podcast. But man, I was like, wow,
It's incredible.
it's
Yeah.
Louisiana. It's a guy
Well,
in Louisiana.
he's from Florida and
Uh-huh.
has relocated to Columbus. It's a good friend of mine, Hector Robles.
Okay.
My age.
Wow.
He's maybe a little bit older than I am. Man, just incredible content. There's a lot of great apostolic media, and we're at that point where Jesus is about to come back, and any way possible that somebody could receive the gospel,
Yes.
God's going to make sure that happens. If they're a reader, it's going to be through books.
Yeah.
And I've been very humbled to hear stories of people passing my book on to somebody, that has not been baptized or has not received the Holy Ghost, and it's blessed them. If somebody likes listening to podcasts or audiobooks, whatever way, God is going to reach somebody.
Excellent.
And I'm just privileged to be a part of it, to be trusted with this time in history, and again to be a part of this podcast and this ministry of the Apostolic Review is quite a great thing for me. So thank you again.
Yes, sir. Thanks for those props, man. It's an exciting thing that's happening and just growing so fast, and we're excited about
Sure.
your book. Thank you.
Yes,
We're
sir.
going to put this up there again. And where can they go? Like, what's the quickest route, guy? Watching this or listening
Sure.
podcast. Where does he go to buy?
Amazon.
Amazon's
It's
the
only
best route.
available on Amazon right now.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Well, Brother Vaughn, thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
For taking the time to be with us today, and we're looking forward to your future projects.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I
All right,
appreciate it.
Thank you all for joining us.